We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hello, this is Teka Lark Fleming, and this is the Blk Grrrl Show. We're going to have a great show tonight. We're going to have Nana Gyamfi and Linda Kite. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics, so stay tuned. But before we do that, I'm going to do the Breaking the Table that I always have every single episode, every single Thursday. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, today we're going to be talking about Marx, white supremacy, and the left. There is a saying, the white man's water is colder. That saying references how within white supremacy, white people's pain, ideas, and creativity are more real than non-white people's. In many progressive circles, when you bring up anti-black racism, you'll often hear it dismissed as a symptom. There is a subconscious idea that anti-black racism isn't real. It usually follows with a paraphrase of Karl Marx. Racism is a symptom of capitalism. We need to work on ridding the world of capitalism. For some reason, when white, Latino, and black people say this, they don't realize how standalone racist it sounds. It is a white racial framing of history. The white racial frame is the master frame any thought, idea, or belief is viewed from the historical narrative of whiteness. I highly suggest you read Joe Fagan's book, The White Racial Frame. Most people do not understand the context in which that was stated or the history of the man who came up with the theory. It was written in an essay, Wage and Labor in Capital, by Karl Marx in 1847. Karl Marx's father converted from Judaism to Lutheranism to escape one of the oldest forms of racism or bigotry, anti-Semitism. And though Marx was Jewish, he had some very anti-Semitic writing. As there are black people who want to believe that racism can only be behaved away with respectability politics, there are Jewish people who truly think that if they change their name and agree with anti-Semitism, that anti-Semitism will go away. Oppressed people often make up logical reasons for their oppression and often like to imagine that the basis of their oppression is something they can control, even the great and troubled ones like Karl Marx. According to Plato Robinson's book, Deathly Silence, Everyday People in the Holocaust, anti-Semitism, which is racism, can be traced back at least to 72 AD, when the Romans expelled the Jews from Palestine. During the Crusades, before the Christians killed the Muslims in Israel, they killed the Jews at home first. These events are clearly long before the existence of capitalism and disrupts Marx's entire theory on racism. Jewish is a man-made category. Black is a man-made category. Both are valid in the present era. Capitalism isn't a tree with racism, homophobic, and sexist leaves. A better analogy is weaponry. Racism, classism, and sexism are all equal weapons to oppress people. The real disease isn't capitalism, and the problem isn't a disease. The problem is a clear-headed, irrational killer in cultures viewed through the white person's lens. The killer's name is oppression. Oppression is carried out through various violent weaponry. Oppression occurred during the era of monarchy, continued on with imperialism, and exists now in capitalism. One of the newer weapons is the anti-black form of racism. An older weapon is anti-Semitism. And an even older weapon is sexism. Newer weapons are more efficient, but weapons can kill you if you know how to use them correctly. The weapon of racism may have initially been used for just hunting purposes, so only dangerous during hunting, i.e. in relationships when black people were poor and white people were rich. Currently, the weapon of anti-black racism is used for all kinds of purposes. I'm not poor, yet I experience racism. Anti-black racism has moved beyond its initial point, and if you can't see that, it's because you're probably not acknowledging your white racial framing of history. A person of any race can have a white racial framing of history. Many people argue that race is a man-made concept, that it's not real. What isn't a man-made concept? Sexism is man-made. Homophobia is man-made. Poverty is man-made. War is a man-made concept. Should we not discuss those either? Is ending war a pointless conversation because the root of it is capitalism and money? I doubt many in the progressive circles would shut down the war conversation to discuss capitalism. If I took a gun and shot you in the head because of an imaginary fight I got in with you in my own head, is my action not something that should be discussed? The implication that when you imply that racism is a symptom of capitalism means that you assume that racism is actually rational. Racism is simply a more efficient way to make money. Racism is validated by cognitive dissonance. Anti-black racism is validated by the white racial frame that filters everything from art to culture to history from the white supremacy perspective. It even filters people's pain. Anti-black racism isn't real because black isn't real. Black people aren't real. That's what you're saying when you're saying racism isn't real. Hijacking race conversations with the real reason is capitalism just proves that racism has nothing to do with capitalism, because even within anti-capitalism circles, the white man's water is still colder, even if it's Jewish. So that was Teka Lark with Breaking the Table. Up next, we're going to have Nana Gyamfi, and we'll be talking about anti-black racism in current day and how the law can help in defeating that. So thank you so much. All right. Hello, Nana. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Oh, I'm happy to have you here. What we're going to do first is kind of read a little bit of your bio.
Okay.
You own the Crenshaw Legal Clinic. You actually just, in 2013, November, you helped Jabari Jamani win a $1.1 million verdict because he was with the fire department, and it was racism. 3 decades of racism. You have a law degree from UCLA. You practice criminals, immigration, employment discrimination, and you're known as the people's lawyer in the community. So thank you so much, and we're just going to jump into it.
Thank you.
Yes. So can you tell us a little bit about the firefighter, about Jabari? Can you tell us a little bit about that and what happened there? And
yes, his case, I was listening to your Break the Table, and it's so connected in terms of the discussion of this post-racial world that we allegedly live in, that I don't know where these people are that live in this world. I don't know where this world is, but apparently this world exists. And in this world, because you have black people that have made money and have gotten jobs that have benefits, etc., everything is fine. And everyone is supposed to just laugh off anything that occurs that clearly shows that racism is alive and well. And in Jabari Jamani's case, he's a firefighter who, from the very beginning, just with his name alone, was seen as a threat to white supremacy within the fire department. I think it's important for people to know, just briefly, let's remember who became firefighters and police officers. We have a stereotype that we even have in the media on these various shows, right? As the firefighters and the police officers as related to immigrants that came through Ellis Island, right? Correct. So they are Irish, right? So there's always an Irish guy on the show who drinks too much, right? There's an Irish detective, and there's a Polish person, an Italian person. These people were the buffer people that white supremacy used to keep black people out of so many different kinds of blue collar jobs where you didn't necessarily have to have a college degree, but you could still make a good living and you could get benefits. And so there has always been, even to today, such a resistance to allow black folks into fire departments, especially into police departments. We don't hear about that often. But if you just look at cases, they're all over the country where you see this resistance. And that's the kind of resistance that Jabari Jamani experienced when he began his career in the late 80s. They made fun of his name. They literally wouldn't call him by his name. They would take people on, pick people up, because here in Los Angeles, the fire department also does ambulance work. Come back, sit around that table that they always show, on TV, where they're sitting and playing around. And what they're playing around about is making fun of Chinese people, making fun of black people, making fun of Latinos and Chicanos. And, they would look at the rookie with the funny name, as they described him, and he wasn't laughing, and he was making it clear that he found that to be offensive. And so they immediately began to try to get rid of him. So the normal firefighter has 3 years or they go for 3 months at one station over a year. So during their probationary period, they end up going to 3, at most 4 stations. Jabari Jamani was sent to 10 different stations.
Wow.
A couple of them, he would walk in and they were like, "You? Oh no, go back. Don't even put clothes on." this type of thing continued, and there was no limit to what they were willing to do in order to really try to terrorize him and intimidate him out of the fire department, because they could not stand to have his kind in there.
And that went on for 30 years.
That went on for basically 30 years. And we're talking about things such as he called in sick one day. They have something called a humanitarian visit.
Okay.
That's supposed to be used when you're missing, when they can't find you.
Mm-hmm.
That he called in a little before, around 6 a.m. They had 2 fire trucks and a chief out there at 1 p.m. at his house, allegedly to do a humanitarian visit. Now, on the stand, the fire chief, the person people's fire chief, Jimmy Hill, a black man who was very instrumental in allowing all this discrimination to occur, not just with Jabari, but with others, he testified on the questioning from the city attorney that, no, we don't do that. You have to wait, if you don't do a humanitarian visit until someone's missing for like 2 weeks. And so I got up there and said, so you wouldn't do it after 1 day? He said, 1 day? No. Did you hear me, counselor? I said after 2 weeks. I said, okay, well, how about from 6 to 1 p.m., 6 a.m. to 1 p.m.? He's like, that was ridiculous. I showed him the paper. He had signed off on it.
And this was a black fire chief?
This was a black fire chief. There was a time in 2007 when you heard about cases here where there was a black lesbian woman, for example, who had urine placed in her mouthwash, was called, the B word was talked about in terms of her sexual orientation. You had a black man who was given dog food. You had all these things that had happened. And someone from out of state who was a former firefighter had contacted Chief Jimmy Hill and said to him, hey, what is going on over there? I mean, I'm hearing about people putting urine in people's mouthwash, etc. And he said, and Jimmy Hill's response was, and these people are suing. I'm telling you, the N-words are out of control. That was his response.
That was his, that is just amazing. And so in regards to the amendment that I guess that would have that helped your case, would it be like the 14th Amendment? Was this the amendment, or was it?
Yes, it's the 14th Amendment that it comes through the California Constitution. So the 14th Amendment is the U.S. Constitution. Mm-hmm. The California Constitution has a similar amendment. Mm-hmm. That is the amendment that prevents this type of discrimination, mm-hmm. that makes this type of discrimination something that is actionable, that is not supposed to happen, and that people, companies, public entities can be held liable and responsible for. It's so the 14th Amendment, it's been extended to the states. Various states ratified it, including California in its own. California, actually, its provision is wider mm-hmm. than the provision of the federal government, because it includes sexual orientation, includes, other things that the federal government does not include. But the basic purpose is to protect and give equal protection to people, regardless of color, regardless of class, religion, etc. I think it's important to point out, again, going back to your discussion with breaking the table,
yes,
that the 14th Amendment is specifically a Reconstruction Amendment. Mm-hmm. It comes out of the issue of enslavement, mm-hmm. which in this country was based on race.
Yes.
And I want to be, I think we need to be clear about that, because we often hear about, there were white people that were also slaves, and there were Indians that were also, no, slavery was, in this country, chattel slavery was reserved for Africans. Okay. There were people who were involuntary servitude, people that had other forms of serfdom. And so the 14th Amendment was specifically targeted to the enslaved African, giving the enslaved African and the non-enslaved African citizenship in this country, because up until then, black folks in this country were not United States citizens. Okay? They Correct. Were still Africans.
Correct.
They were still Africans, mixed, not mixed, whatever. They mm-hmm. were still Africans. And so when we look now at how the 14th Amendment is being used and how we are being taken out of the 14th Amendment, mm-hmm. when you say that it's a post-racial world and racism doesn't exist anymore, and the focus is really class and the focus is capitalism, then the 14th Amendment isn't really necessary, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it really focuses on this race thing, and that's not occurring anymore, when in fact we know that even slavery has just taken on another name, but really hasn't taken on another racial category.
Correct. Right. I mean, and I think that's one thing that it's weird how the 14th Amendment goes through so many. It's so powerful if it's used, if it's actually used, and people know about it in regards to and how it applies to so many situations where Black people are oppressed, like stop and frisk.
Right.
In New York, it was the 4th Amendment and the 14th Amendment that was used to kind of like say this is not legal. So, I mean... And
it's very important. I mean, we talk about how you get free, and our Baba Malcolm X says by any means necessary. And the courts are one of those means. You know, it may not be revolution, right? It may just be reform. But chattel slavery to this is reform, and I'll take it. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be a chattel slave, so I'm cool with that. It's not revolution. It's not the ultimate of what I'm looking for.
Exactly.
But it'll do for now to enable us to fight. The issue a lot of times is the political will of those who have the power to enforce and to push, and the will of the people who are oppressed to press the issue of standing on the 14th Amendment, standing on their right to equal protection. And often because those who are against allowing us to have our rights under the 14th Amendment are violent, you know, are intimidating, are powerful, we are afraid to do that. So when we know just from talking to our community the way that the police treat people who call 911 for help. They show up, and I taught my son from a young age, do not call 911 ever. I don't care if someone's breaking in this house. You call the neighbor, you call that one, because the police will come and you'll be dead. Okay?
Yeah.
And I don't think, I mean, I grew up a diplomat's kid. I can tell you for a fact that my white compatriots did not have to have this kind of conversation with their relatives, right? But we know that this is the case, but people are so unwilling in terms of our community to really come out against the police in terms of these types of practices, because people are afraid. They try to pretend it's because, you know, the police help us and this, that, and the other, but it's not that. It's fear. They know that the police will come busting in our windows and busting in our doors, that the police will plant stuff on us, that the police will, you know, say that we've committed a crime that we haven't committed. And that fear of the police, like the fear of the Klan, is what keeps us from pushing for our rights in the way that we should.
And I think that that's another thing, I mean, in regards to people being afraid of the police. I mean, I remember growing up in Los Angeles, and I remember one of my friends called the police because there was a drug dealer next door. And this was in the they call it Filipino town now, a little Filipino town now, but back then it was Rampart. And we called. The cops came and put guns over our heads and told us, you know, don't call us again. You guys are no. I mean, this is in Los Angeles. This is what we've learned.
Right, real life.
This is real life. And I was told, well, yeah, it was crazy back then. But even now, we have laws like the gang injunction,
right?
That's almost violating. It's kind of a law to violate people's civil rights. I mean, can you go into that a little bit?
That's what it does. The gang injunctions, when they first came out, I have a colleague, James Simmons, who I do a lot of work with. He's another National Conference of Black Lawyers, legal arm of the Black Revolution person.
Yeah.
And he was one of the people who first came out, he and another sister attorney named Lachelle Woodard, when the first gang injunctions came out. And they tried to tell people, hey, I know you think this is good because it says gang injunction. And so somewhere in your brain, you think this means that this gang, who you're forgetting is your children, by the way.
Exactly.
This gang, who is, I guess, some aliens from some other place that have allegedly invaded your place, that they're going to be enjoined from engaging in behavior that is destructive. When in fact, it created situations where people could not go to the park. Like if we set up programs for, you know, night basketball type of programs, people couldn't participate because they couldn't come to the park. People could not stay with their own relatives. So it further destroyed communities and the sense of community that people had. It caused the gang injunction. You didn't have to have a name, which is completely against regular jurisprudence. If you're going to say that Teka cannot do something, her name should be on there.
Exactly.
The police would just go and just hand it to people that they thought were gang members, i.e. black folks between the ages of 13 and 53. No, honestly.
No,
I just
true.
hand it out to people and say, if we see you around here again, you're going to jail. If we see you riding a bike, you're going to jail. If we see you talking to your cousin, you're going to jail. And the people, in terms of our community, didn't do anything because we were bamboozled into believing that this was somehow going to solve our problem. And instead, my position is that gang injunctions became were the precursors to this gentrification. Where they begin to break up communities, send people out, put people in jail, push people out of HUD housing, etc., so they can raise that stuff, build the condos so the hipsters can come in.
Wow. And it's weird because that the person I'm talking to later is going to kind of like, it's going to be like the part 2 of that conversation, Linda. I'm like, wow, this is, and that's one thing I think is so hard to tell people. Gang injunction, the name is so clever because you think, oh, well, of course, I don't like gangs. I don't want a gang. I mean, I know in my community, I had a really hard time. I was very kind of like trying to tell people that gang injunctions is just going to be it could just be a group of people. And it's not gang members. It's just kids,
right? And the
adults.
thing is that we knew that, but somehow there was, again, you talk about that cognitive dissonance. We knew that they are pulling our sons and daughters over and taking their picture and filling out gang cards and saying, "Where do you live?" and then just putting whatever the gang is for that area, whether they are a gang member or not. We knew that they were doing that. They were doing that all over this city. Okay, that's what the crash units, right? Remember them? That's what all of that was about. So we knew they were doing that, but at the same time, somehow we weren't connecting that with the fact that, right, and they're going to use that same information that we know is bogus in order to enjoin our kids. That cognitive dissonance is there and has always been there. It's connected to that respectability politics that you were talking about, because black people are embarrassed that we have visible symptoms of white supremacy and world domination. We're embarrassed about that. That we have conditions that show that we are victims of white supremacy and world domination. But that's what happens. That's what happens. It's like being being afflicted with cancer and being embarrassed that you have, cancer cells. This is what occurs when you have this affliction of white supremacy that assails your community. You're going to have people that engage in crime. You're going to have people that don't have money. You're going to have people that have lost their darn minds. You're going to have that because that's part of what white supremacy does. And we need to stop being so embarrassed about that so we can deal with the real problem, which is white supremacy.
Yeah. And what are some tools that we can use? I mean, I know one thing I think is, in regards to before I ask you about the tools, I want to ask you. I'm like, I have a lawyer here. I should ask her all these questions that are in my mind.
That's fun.
A lot of people talk about the militarization of the police department, even though the black communities had problems with the police even before the militarization. The Homeland Security money and the violation of the Fourth Amendment in a conjunction, they're using kind of like the terrorism, right? As that was kind of like what funded this militarization of. Right.
It's the war on drugs continued. See, this started with the war on drugs. If you recall, there's a documentary on Tulia, Texas, where this man was like Sheriff of the Year, and he was literally just lying and grabbing all these black people and throwing them in prison because they were giving you money. They were giving these departments money. The higher your drug conviction rate, the more money you were getting. So he was just grabbing up people and taking them there. And fortunately, some attorneys got involved and were able to blow it wide open with the help of the Fourth Estate, some journalists, and blow it wide open and make those changes. But it started with that. That's where we got the battering rams. The battering ram is not normal. That was a military instrument, right? We started getting these tanks coming in. We started getting all of these things. And so what we have now with the militarization is just increased, because now instead of having maybe 2 open wars and 6 hidden wars, now we have like 5 open wars going on and 50 billion hidden wars. So we have more stuff that can be circulated. And so that's what we see now. But it started with the war on drugs and has continued into this war on terrorism.
Wow. And it's being funded by, every time you look at this, every time one of your departments, like the sheriff or Metro gets Homeland Security funds, you're kind of saying you're signing up. When you think you're signing up for protecting yourself, you're signing up for the militarization of the police department. I mean, what can we do in regards to the legal front? People not, what advice can you give to people in regards to, how they vote and how they interact with, because I mean, a lot of people kind of try to figure out how to interact with the police, but how on a higher level, like how can we prevent this kind of stuff in regards to the law?
Well, part of what we need to do is to look at who makes the policies and how are these policies executed, right? And so part of the problem that we have, which is something that you talk about a lot in Morningside Park Chronicle, is this kind of sheepish following of politicians of various sorts, where we are following them instead of really coming to them and saying, look, this is the agenda that we're interested in. And so that needs to happen more. I mean, if you have a place like Inglewood, for example, that I live in, I have my office is in LA and I live in Inglewood.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I live in Inglewood. So you have a place like in Inglewood where I live in. It should be an issue that we are asking people who are running for city council, etc. What are you doing about what would your policy be with respect to police misconduct? What would your policy be with respect to identifying officers that have multiple complaints? What would your policy? We need to start asking people in these town hall meetings about this issue, because this issue of black folks and the police is when, police came out of the oppression of enslaved people, us, and so this has always been the relationship. We ain't never had a good relationship. That was not how it's set up. It was set up for us to have a horrible relationship. So we need to start asking those who the police are clearly protecting and serving, which is not us, right, that we are voting into office. What are you doing to make sure that these policies are here in place? Why can't we have a community commission that deals with and addresses what goes on with Inglewood Police Department? Why can't we have that? Why can't we have that? We should be able to have that. I mean, Inglewood is not a huge place. You can't say that it's because it's so huge and ungangly or whatever. No. Why can't we have that? Why can't we have that model of community members who have been in the community in Inglewood? You have folks that have been there for 30 years, folks that have been there for a long time,
50, 60
that can sit along with new folks, right? Folks that have come in recently, people that are clearly engaged, and let's look at these records that these police officers have so that we don't have a situation where they're shooting someone at the Raleighs and then 4 weeks later they're shooting someone else in an apartment complex. Same cop. We shouldn't have that kind of situation. So part of it is our own organizing and holding politicians accountable. Looking when we vote, whenever they have this, the votes to increase the militarization, to increase this, increase that, we have to vote no. We have to stop voting yes because we want to pretend that it's going to make us safer. It hasn't done it yet, so we have to focus on that. And the third thing is that we have to be willing to go down to these police stations and deal with these police chiefs. Deal with these commissions, deal with folks directly, not just do a lot of locker room talk about how terrible the situation is. Because even though they try to act like there's only 2 black people left in LA County, there's a lot of us in Inglewood. There's a lot of us in various parts of Los Angeles and other cities that are in, this county and around this country. And we need to let them feel our collective power. Power concedes nothing without demand, as Frederick Douglass taught us, never has and never will.
And we do have power. I think that's an important thing that people should know, that we do have power and we can make a difference if we do go up to these people and tell them what we want. And, the law is a powerful thing. The Constitution, that protects all of us. And I think that people don't, other people understand the value of people like Nana. You're very, the law, lawyers, they protect us. I mean, so much. You guys do so much work. So, I really appreciate all the work that you've done to support the community and support people. And
thank you.
You're welcome. And I need, before we wrap up, I want to say, is there anything that's going on that you're doing in regards to? I know you have a legal clinic that you have, and
we have a legal clinic. It's located at 7526 Crenshaw Boulevard, and we're going to begin to do $1 a minute consultations, one day every 2 weeks. So 2 Saturdays from now, which for some reason has escaped me what exact date that is, but 2 Saturdays from now, the second Saturday in September, we are going to be having one of our $1 a minute consultations where you can come in. It's up to 30 minutes. And you can come in, ask your questions, get some answers, get help filling out forms, etc. Part of the problem that we believe we have in the community is just a lack of education. We got a lot of homie to homie law. You know what I understand is okay, and it's completely wrong, right? So we need to get more information about what we can do, and that empowers us to make us feel like we can do something. Because Teka, as you know, what is the saying? You can't fight City Hall. They don't even tell you can't beat City Hall. They tell you can't even fight. You can't even put up your dukes. You can't even fight City Hall, right? So we have to empower our people to understand that, no, we can fight and we can be victorious. And hopefully that's what Jabari's case and other cases that we have been able to win can demonstrate to the community. We can fight and we will win.
Exactly. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
visiting
Thank
us.
you for
I
having
really
me.
appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Appreciate
You're
you.
welcome. Up next, we're going to have Linda Kite. So we're going to go on a break. So thank you so much.
They want more money, but the board won't pay.
Oh, they gonna pay though. They gonna get theirs. Okay. Put the coke down, now we selling CDs. Regime change from here to overseas. Hustling, moving the muscling. Do this for my nephew Justin. Do this for the political soldiers locked in. Negroes on the block getting framed again. Can't go to war cause I ain't got my money right. But when I do, I'ma make sure y'all brothers see the light. Buy the blueprints, what's the best way to get in? How many guns they got, what cell is he in? We moved in on broad daylight when they least expected it. We perfected it. Hop on the roofer, jumped in the chopper. Disappeared like David Copper. Dropped us off in DC. Loaded on an oil boat and proceed by sea. Figured that the plane would be too obvious. So far the plan was so marvelous. I was kinda surprised it wasn't that hard. I already paid off the National Guard. POWs feeling free as a bird. Not quite, but we halfway to Johannesburg. This is a dream I had on August 17th. Woke up smiling when on 2018.
Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. You're tuned in to LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.
Hey everybody, it's your man Sabir Bey, back on your airwaves, inviting you to join us every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Sabir Bey Show, discussing history, law, and hip-hop. Every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the Sabir Bey Show, exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You also can catch us on iTunes Radio and R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch us and listen directly at LATalkLive.com. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Dr. Levi, your fitness doctor, making a personal house call, inviting you to join me Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific for my all-new show, The Dr. Levi Show. Join us as we discuss fitness, health, and well-being, including emotional and spiritual health. So don't forget to tune in to the Dr. Levi Show every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, exclusively on LATalkLive.com and the Talk Live Broadcast Network. You can also catch us on iTunes, Radio R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv, or catch us on the Live 365 network, and now on Radio Flag and Stitcher Radio. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
All right, we're back with Linda Kite. So Linda Kite is a director for Healthy Homes Collaborative in Los Angeles. She's working collaboratively with government agencies and community-based organizations to ensure the primary prevention that takes place in the highest risk communities in Los Angeles. She has worked on lead poisoning prevention in Los Angeles, California. You actually got one of the largest settlements, $14 million, I guess, for someone who violated the Prop 65.
Yes.
Yeah. So congratulations for that. So, I mean that you got that, but then.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I think the lesson learned here is, on the one hand, where we even got into Prop 65, it's not normally used on housing. It's when you see Prop 65 warnings, you're at the gas station, you're pumping gas, it says, oh, watch out, this stuff will cause cancer, birth defects. So you're supposed to watch out, right? Mm-hmm. In this case, it was actually, what happened was there was 1,175 units in this housing project. And the way I even entered was, a young mom came to me and said, I want to know why my kid's lead poisoned. Can you come check my apartment? And like a fresh new organizer, of course, I made an appointment, showed up, went. And when I got there, I realized, oh my God, this is like 100 acres. It's only 70, but it looked huge, right? And lots of units. And so we found out where the lead was, moved the crib away from the window, that kind of thing. And as I talked to her, I thought, like a good organizer, you're supposed to get more people involved. And so I asked her if any of her neighbors would be concerned. From there, I was introduced to the tenants' rights group that was already in place. They had been fighting illegal rent increases, all manner of tenants' rights issues. And at that point, when we got involved in the lead education piece, we got to a point where we knew there were 4 lead poisoned kids, and I say this in air quotes, that had accidentally been tested and accidentally found, right? Because there's a complete failure in the healthcare delivery system, especially in 1992. It was really bad. Those 4 children, the health department came out, did an investigation, ordered abatement on all 4 of those units, so the landlord had to fix those units, and then the health department walked away saying, problem solved. And we, I was very naive and unaware of all the laws and rules involved. And I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. You got 1,171 other units with like about 5,000 kids living here. I'm thinking maybe we should fix the whole property, not just the 4 units. And unfortunately, the limitations in the health department were that they were only allowed to order abatement after a child was poisoned.
What?
Yes, that was 1992. That was just how the rules were written, unfortunately.
I'll make sure you get on the mic so we can make sure we can hear you.
Okay, great. great. Yeah, so the law was written so that the health department could only investigate cases. So after a child was actually poisoned, then they could go in, find out what poisoned him, and if it was the housing, order the landlord to do the repairs.
Wait, I have to make one point really quickly. Okay, so 4 kids were poisoned in this building.
We knew that 4 of them.
You knew 4 of them were poisoned in this building, so they were in different apartments. So obviously, the whole apartment. I mean, that to me would make common sense. If 4, it wouldn't be like, oh well, there's 4 ran. So they just were like, oh, until we get actual. That's outrageous. Okay, go ahead. Just wanted to clarify that.
Well, the other part of the outrageousness is that what ends up happening when you have a rule like that is you use the kids as lead detectors, right? If the kids get a sufficient amount of lead in their blood and magically go to the doctor at the right time and accidentally get their blood tested, I mean, yeah, it's a system that, let's just say, was not very well thought out.
But no. I'm just like, I'm in shock. That is horrible. I mean, and let me this kind of like just let people know about what Prop 65 is. It prohibits companies that do business within California. They have to kind of let everybody know all of the things inside their actual products that could actually poison and kill people or maim them. So that's Prop 65 was to actually a listing. Is that
right? Okay. So it's chemicals that cause cancer or birth defects. That's what Prop 65 was, right? We knew that there was stuff out there and that we should be warned. It's a right to know law, so that if you're at the gas pump, maybe you're pregnant, maybe you shouldn't pump your gas. Maybe you should let somebody else do it, right? Because we know they could cause birth defects as well as cancer. So
with the lead, for what you were doing.
So lead is one of the chemicals that falls under Prop 65 because it causes birth defects and perhaps is related to cancer. Yes. That science is still kind of out there. Okay. In this case, let's fast forward. Okay. Let's go way back in history. So here you had the 4 families, and fine, their problems were solved, but we knew that it was a ticking time bomb for the rest of the families there. Part of the organizing and education, and I guess I should back up a little bit and explain in case somebody doesn't know, lead poisoning causes brain damage, central nervous system damage, birth defects. It's the #1 environmental toxin that causes miscarriages and or birth defects. The #1. I mean, there's nothing else that causes more birth defects or more miscarriages that's in the environment. So real basic, we've known about this for a long time, and don't get me started on the paint industry and how hard they have fought us, because that's a whole other show.
Oh wow. Okay.
That said, in this case, so there I am being a good young organizer and knocking on doors and getting people riled up to fight, right? Okay. And health department said so then we were fighting, and we got to a place where the rest of the tenants said, well, by by golly, we want to know how much lead there was in the paint, and we want to know, what we're being exposed to. So I asked the health department for their records. They had done an investigation. They had determined there's this other way to detect lead instead of a kid. Using a portable X-ray gun, you point it at the surface, and then it gives you an instant result. That's one way. You can send paint chips to a laboratory. You can do dust wipes. I mean, there's other ways. But the easiest is this portable X-ray gun that all the people in the health department who do these investigations carry. So we, asked the health department, hey, can we have those results on the paint? Because, I'm doing some education here. And we were summarily told, nope, can't have them because it's medical confidential information. And I said, yeah, no, I don't need to know Jose's lead level. I got that. I already talked to mom. Yeah. She told me. I need to know the lead levels in the paint. And they're like, nope, sorry, it's related to a case investigation. It's medical confidential information. You can't have it. Well, those are fighting words for an organizer.
Okay. Yeah, you can't have it.
And so I had a real bad day, and I called every single lawyer that I knew, and I said, wait a minute, isn't this a right to know? People have a right to know that they're being exposed. I get the limitations in the health department. They can only go in and order abatement after kids poisoned. Fine, that's a weird law, and I don't know why they wrote it that way, but, I'm just getting started on this, so I'll just roll with what there is. Let's find out what there is, and let's tell people and let them, go forward. Back and forth. Finally, I said, what about Prop 65? Don't people have the right to know? And that's where an attorney actually at the district attorney's office said, that's a really good legal theory. Why don't we meet? So we brought in, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, MALDEF, all of the public interest lawyers in LA, as well as the district attorney's office. And we met and kicked this around and realized, well, for Prop 65, it's usually used on corporations that are for perhaps emitting something that would cause these problems in the neighborhood. You have to have at least 10 employees, and that's the kicker, right? At least 10 employees. Well, 1,175 units on 70 acres, you got at least 10 gardeners on the property and lots of maintenance crews. So we did the math and realized, hey, there's at least 10 employees. So we went ahead and went forward. Under Prop 65, what's fascinating, it's California is the only state in the country that has this great tool. Mm-hmm. Anybody who exposes you and does not let you know, and it's just a sticker. You just warn people, hey, by the way, this stuff might kill you. But if they fail to put that sticker up, right, at that point, then the penalties are $5,000 per day and go all the way back to 1987.
Wow.
Because that's when the law was passed. And you should have been warning people since then, right? So do the math. You got 1,175 units. So it's $5,000 per unit. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And if you really want to get crazy, you could do it per person that you failed to warn, right? And then per day. So these folks were looking at billions of dollars worth of just penalties, fines, right? And we had them over a barrel. We also had poisoned kids to prove that someone had been injured as a result of their failure to let people know. And consequently, settling for $14 million seemed a little more interesting to them than having to pay $5 billion or whatever it was in fines. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
I know.
But I mean, even though they got that fine, how horrible! Because they actually just calculated how many people were sickened and how many people had miscarriages and how many birth defects were caused because just of selfishness, and they were hiding it because they had this information. That the health department has this information and didn't give it to you, so that means that people knew.
Right. Right. And certainly the owner, it was the owner who knew because obviously they had gotten the reports from the 4 children that had been investigated. So the owner had a right to know, but somehow the people who lived there who were bearing the burden, they didn't have to know according to the original plan, right?
And what was the name of this place? What was it?
It's called Wyvernwood Garden Apartments, and it's actually the first property in California built in a garden style. Beautiful units. They face each other. The intention of garden apartments was to create community, right? And so in that case, I mean, and I think out this way, you've got Village Green. I don't know if that sounds familiar, right?
Green,
that's the same. In fact, we're in solidarity now in our campaign. Yeah. But same kind of thing, where the idea was you create green space, open space, and when the neighbor opens the door, you're facing someone else. So you get to know each other and it creates community. Beautiful land, beautiful place, wonderful people living there. Unfortunately, they had this lead poisoning thing. The other thing, too, that we didn't say was, it's not just even miscarriages, birth defects, all that. But when we talk about brain damage, we're talking about kids who can't learn in school. We're also talking about behavioral problems. And then, interesting science, I call it weird science, it's actually directly correlated to an increase in violence.
Wow.
So let's just think about our communities, picking up on, your intro and what we just heard, right? Let us think about the oldest communities in LA where the oldest housing is. That's what we euphemistically call distressed housing, right? In other words, housing that's in bad shape, right? Hasn't been painted in a while. Things are chipping and peeling, old double hung windows that constantly cause friction. All of that actually results in lead poisoning. And then I explain the abysmal failure of the health system to actually test people and actually ensure that those children get their test at 12 months and 24 months as the law states, because that's when we want to know, right? That's when kids are mobile. They're running around. They're putting things in their mouth. They're crawling. Everything's in their mouth. Well, all that invisible lead dust from years of deteriorating paint ends up in that kid. Ends up ruining their brain, makes them hyperactive, makes them not able to sit still, concentrate, focus, learn, right? Science. I mean, 29,000 studies published in just the recent journals, right? And we know lead is bad, right?
Yeah.
You can see sitcom jokes, but in reality, this is what it translates into. And then this strong correlation with violence, where they have done it. They have controlled for SES. They have controlled for everything, right? You can take a privileged white kid in Boston who's lead poisoned, and that kid's going to be more violent than the rest of his other neighbors who aren't lead poisoned.
This building was, I know that this building is was built in 1939. Well, and it's in Boyle Heights. That's a section of Los Angeles, Boyle Heights.
East LA.
East LA. I like my great grandfather always said, my great grandfather was born in Boyle Heights in 1899. That's like my story. Okay, so you got that settlement,
right?
And so did they clean up the area?
So the owner who owned it at the time, he of course got rid of the problem, sold it, right? And then new company came in, bought it for $26 million, had to do $14 million worth of rehab because that's what the court order said, right? That was the settlement agreement. And then during the bubble, pulled out $100 million, right? As we like to say, robbed that community of its equity. And now is looking to, in fact, build 4,150 luxury units on the property.
That's what I heard about. I heard the Save Wyvenrwood campaign. Correct. So after all of this work, after kind of getting, finding all this information, doing all the hard work. All the hard work.
6 years of meeting with tenants every week.
6 years
to do the campaign to get the lead out, right? And then we get the lead out. And this is the thing. This is what I constantly remind our councilmen, right? This is the largest privately owned housing complex west of the Mississippi of historical significance that is lead-free.
It's the largest. Well, so now thanks to your organization.
Thanks to the hard work.
Yes, thanks to your hard work.
Right.
So now I'm hearing save. I mean, are they planning on throwing people out of this building? What's going on?
They plan to raise it, replace it with luxury units, and so we have fought them every step of the way, right? I mean, it's gentrification, right? Urban removal projects, we know, right? And clearly the new owners who bought it were speculators. Part of the way that they did the work, you knew that they really didn't mean for things to last that long. They were sort of, okay, we're just going to hold on to it, and then eventually we'll do our big campaign. So we have fought hard enough to where now they will do one-for-one replacement on the rental units, right? Their original plan was 4,400 units of all condos. We said, no, that's not going to work. So we fought. They will replace rental units for folks, but here's the kicker.
Okay.
Because it's under rent control right now. So you have families that have lived there 20, 30 years who are paying, say, $700 a month for a two-bedroom unit, a decent two-bedroom unit, right, with a yard and everything. You're not going to get that kind of rent, not in L.A. I mean, maybe in Kansas. Not going to have it in L.A., right? Nothing against Kansas. However, I have family there. However, so folks, the thing about rent control and the thing about staying in place and building community and really, having a place that you call home, right? With rent control, eventually you're in this circumstance where you're only paying $700 a month for a two-bedroom unit that would otherwise maybe rent for $1,500, $2,000, something like that. So they've fought the tenants, right? Have fought got the agreement, and here's what the developer offered. That's fine. You can keep your rental unit. And if you would like to keep your nice low rent because of rent control, you just have to stay on the property while we do the construction.
Okay.
And they're planning on 15 years of construction. So, I don't know. Would you like to raise your children in a construction zone for 15 years?
So they're saying like, oh, you can stay here, but you have to like work around us while we're building this up. You can, and hopefully they'll probably just try to drive everybody crazy enough so they'll leave on their own.
You think?
No, this is just like so disrespectful. I mean, I'm just amazed at how disrespectful these corporations, these developers are to our communities. People have been in Boyle Heights. That's an old community. People have been there for generations. Generations.
Exactly.
I mean, I still have property in Boyle Heights. I mean, we've been there for, because people who are from there, they're from there.
Right.
So, I mean, it just, and the person who's doing this, is it 15 Assets?
15 Group is the name of the company. They're out of Miami.
Okay. Okay. And they're trying to, and so let's see here. I have my little notes here. So, can the community work on this project or what's going on?
The challenge is this, and it goes back to what you said at the intro, right? Yeah. Bottom line, it's capital. And who owns the property? And it's private property owned by a private corporation. And so that's who gets to call the shots here.
Who gets to call the shots?
They own it. Yeah. They own it. And everybody's complicit, right? Oh, they own it. And so it's their private property. They get to do what they want. Now, we're fighting. We're organizing. We're, definitely creating lots of roadblocks. But at the end of the day, technically, legally, they are allowed to do this because they own the property. We've got some, tricks up our sleeve, but we're definitely fighting them every step of the way. And you're exactly right about generations, right? Because you have folks who grew up there, took off, went to college, came back, chose to live there now as grown-ups and raise their own family there, which tells you what a treasure it is to live in 70 acres of green space. And the apartments are run down because this owner doesn't keep them up according to the law, right? And whatever he does is all cheap and falls apart the minute the inspector leaves, right? So there is definitely pushback and deep community roots that are not going to go without a big fight. You're going to see people chained up to bulldozers.
Well, it seemed like to me that, while like corporations and we call it eminent domain, it seemed like to me that there should be some kind of movement for, the public to be able to reverse eminent domain, where we're kind of like, just because you allegedly own the property, whatever that means, right. Oh, you have the most money, so you had the most access to things, so you get to do whatever you want with the property that you own, even though we've lived here for generations. I know that's kind of a strange thing, but I hope that you guys are actually, you guys have like good attorneys and all that to kind of like save the community, because you guys you have worked very hard to kind of get that to where it's supposed to be. And even though I still want to talk about the Wyvenrwood, I want to know about, in regards to the lead, to kind of go back to that, because I don't want to like what can we do in regards to how can we get information on how to do other than your organization, healthy homes collaborative, but are there other things that we can do in regards to like finding out if we have lead in our homes, or especially people who are in apartments and stuff like that? What do we do?
So good news is I did not only just work on Wyvernwood for 22 years, been busy with a lot of other stuff. So we do have actually some really good laws in California. That frustration about, we use kids as lead detectors, wait a minute, let's do that. So we fix that. Okay. And we have a law in California that says all property built before 1978 probably has lead. And if you don't want to, if you're going to work on it, you have to use lead safe work practices. right? And then the feds came in and said, oh, and you should let people know that they're at risk for lead. Now, I'll tell you, they hand out pamphlets, you sign off, you say, I got the pamphlet, and my big joke there is the only way a pamphlet prevents lead poisoning is if you take the staples out and you glue it on the wall where the paint is chipping and peeling, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Somehow lead causes lead poisoning, not bad housekeeping. Because you get a lot of stuff about how to wash and how to wash your kids' hands, and I'm going, oh my God, we're going to have a generation of OCD kids, right? Because they had to wash their hands so they don't poison themselves because they're crawling around in the dust, right? So in this case, there is a disclosure law. You are required, landlords are required to give this pamphlet out to folks and, let them clean the house obsessively. And then there's also at real estate transactions. So when you're going to buy a house, right, you are required to get this pamphlet. And get this is a great thing because there's a lot of new first-time home buyers, right, that are young, they want to have babies, the whole thing. When you open escrow, you have 10 days to hire an inspector to come in and inspect for lead. If they find lead, then you renegotiate the price because obviously they're going to tell you, it's going to cost $20,000 to fix or whatever the price is, right, depending on the house. And so then you renegotiate that. If that seller refuses to, renegotiate with you, you can walk away from that sale even though you have opened escrow. But you have 10 days to do that in, right?
Okay.
And once they refuse to renegotiate with you and you walk away, you give them that inspection report, and guess what? You have just inversely condemned them, meaning anybody that they're going to sell it to in the future, they have to give out that copy of that report.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's good to know.
So those were federal rules. It's right to know, right? Comes out of my frustration of Prop 65. I'm like, people have a right to know. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Basic, right?
Yeah.
So we got that. So that's at the federal level. And then here at the state, we said all housing built before 1978, you're going to do repairs on it. So it goes back to the tenants' rights thing. You're going to do repairs on it, you better use safe work practices. You better use crews that are trained and certified. You better put down plastic. You better clean up. What do I train contractors? I tell them, you got to clean up so kids can eat off the floor. Why? Because that's what kids do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Kids eat off the floor, yeah.
Don't get all caught up in the science and how many micrograms because it gets real scientific and crazy, right?
Yeah.
No, bottom line, would you let your kid eat off that floor? If you wouldn't let your kid eat off that floor, don't leave that building that way.
Yeah.
I mean, because babies do, and it's not their fault. And guess what? It's normal developmental behavior to crawl around and put everything in your mouth. It is part of your brain development. Unfortunately, we're putting poison in them.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Linda. And thank you so much for visiting us and letting us know all about lead and about Wyvenrwood. And we'll put that all online in regards to that information. So that was the Black Grrrl Show for today. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Nana, and thank you, Linda, for giving us all this great information so that we can be informed citizens. It was kind of great how the show all flowed together, all related and interrelated, and I didn't even plan it that way. Not exactly, but it's all kind of interrelated. Next week, we are going to have the Sierra Club. My friend Kent, we're going to be talking about Beyond Coal. And we're going to be having Black Women for Wellness on, and we'll be talking about some health topics. So thank you so much for joining the Black Grrrl Show, or actually MP Chronicle presents the Black Grrrl Show. This is Teka, Lark, Fleming, every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can also follow us on Twitter. Use the hashtag Black Grrrl, BLK GRRRL. Thank you so much.
That's why they say I'm different. And that's why they say I'm strange. I'm talking about Big Mama Pump. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Lightning Hopkins. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Howlin' Wolf. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Albert King. Chuck Berry. When I was sweet 16. And that's why they say I'm different. And that's why you think I'm strange. I'm talking about T-Bone Walker. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Muddy Waters. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Leadbelly. combination of incredible kind. This is me. This is me. Oh, hey. Oh, Bo Diddley, have you heard her? They seem different. And that's why they seem strange. And that's why they sound funky. A little rigid, wild Lucille sang, you sure can sing it. Robert Johnson, Robert Johnson, Robert Johnson, he played the blues for me. And that's why, and that's why, and that's why they sound different. And that's why, and that's why, and that's why they seem strange. That's why, that's why.
Thank you for tuning into LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network, for original reality radio and crafted for your listening and viewing pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk. Stay tuned.